Welcome to this podcast where I talk to remarkable people, people who made positive or who make positive influence in this world. Scientists, philosophers, authors, medical professionals, artists, and one such remarkable person that I'm going to chat with today is Dr. Surender Neravetla. Dr. Surender Neravetla is a cardiothoracic surgeon based in Springfield, Ohio, United States. He had done over 10,000 cardiac and thoracic surgeries in his long, illustrious career. He is a positive influencer, remarkable person that I'm going to chat with today on the topic of salt and its perils and its negative effects on the excess salt and its negative effects on the body. We know salt, the link between excess salt and hypertension, high blood pressure, right? But most of us don't know about other health problems that excess salt can cause, like asthma, like diabetes. Can you imagine excess salt and diabetes, glaucoma, and so on? Arthritis, dementia, chronic inflammation. So Dr. Surender Neravetla is going to enlighten us in this interesting chat that I did with him. Hope you enjoy and share this important knowledge to everybody, because it's important that we keep our health in perfect shape, at least as much as possible. And if you would like to support me, please subscribe and like and share this episode so we can do more of these in the future. Thank you. Dr. Neravetla, welcome to the podcast. We are happy to have you here.
Thank you, Rajeev. Thank you for the opportunity. I've been on this trail about educating and grassroots education about dangers of table salt since about 2010. And I've been practicing, as you said, since 1983. And for the past 25 years, I myself did not have any idea that salt was such a big problem causing cardiovascular or many other diseases, actually. So I don't blame anybody who does not pay attention to this. But since I discovered it, investigated it, researched it very intensively, and then distilled all that information, like you said, into a very simple read, sixth grade level read book. And that's what you have done. So since then, I've been on a trail of educating my colleagues and common people and minorities, etc.
Yeah, I recommend that everybody should read this book, because like you said, eighth grader, sixth grader knowledge, can understand this book. And you have written multiple articles, blogs, and given a lot of interviews. You are a speaker at many organizations and conferences on this topic. So let me start off. Let's go back a little bit. So 2010, you started educating people about the perils of salt. How did this come about? I know you are a cardiothoracic surgeon. For all people, surgeons are less interested in the medical side of it. You don't have to. I mean, some people don't have time. Some people are not interested. It's the field of cardiologists or endocrinologists and so on, right? So what made you, or nephrologists, I would say, what made you come into this?
It's almost like a serendipity, actually. But there was a very important personal event that happened that triggered this change of heart and got me involved in this. So the triggering event was I went to India around 2010, and a family tragedy, to be honest. So when, as physicians or cardiac surgeons, we go to India, we often, many friends and colleagues come talk to us, and especially with the heart problems. It is a very common thing. I'm sure you face the same thing too.
Right.
But I discovered back that many of my own family members, I'm talking about cousins, friends on both sides, myself and my wife's side, we're a big family. So previous visit was a few years before that. I had not been going there quite that regular. And at that particular visit, any number of people my age and younger had stents put in, I'd gone through heart surgery and have a variety of heart problems, all in the 50s only. And when they showed me those reports, nobody is a smoker. I mean, in our family, extended family, nobody is a smoker. And we all know that smoking has been the number one risk factor for many things, including heart disease. And number two, we've been on this trail about cholesterol. We named cholesterol as the biggest enemy, and we have been targeting cholesterol intensively with a variety of medications. But what I discovered in my own extended family is that not a single person had a cholesterol problem, not a single one. So the two traditional risk factors, smoking and cholesterol, wasn't the problem. So what was the problem? Everybody was severely hypertensive. And I'm going back 10, 15 years now. One of my cousins told me he went and saw the doctor, and he's well placed. He's not like somebody, without any means, well to do person. And he went to see a prominent physician, cardiologist, his family doctor. His blood pressure is 160 over 100. Okay. So he was told that, oh, Barton number is only 100 just now. Just now it's become 100. We'll watch another 6 months to a year. Then we will see whether you need to take any medication. So this was the attitude back then. And to see somebody diastolic over 100, the bottom number, systolic in 160 to 200 range was extremely common in my own extended family, who were very well-to-do, reasonably speaking. Okay, not I mean what I mean by that is they had access to medical information. So high blood pressure was rampant and uncontrolled. And I started looking how does this high blood pressure cause this heart disease, and my eyes just went like that. Oh my God, this has been right under my nose for all these years. Why didn't I know that? I didn't locate it that. And I said, well, if I don't know that, many don't know this. And it gives me an opportunity to figure out, to explain. So the thing is, how do you explain? You've read the book. So I first wrote all the research together, okay? And I engaged an editor. And she said, who's going to read this book? This information is already there for the last 30, 40 years. And one more information is not going to change anything. I said, okay, what do I need to do? He said, whatever you write, anybody reads it, needs to be able to read in a basic English reading skill, like sixth grade, okay? Number two, if they read it, they should see it happening to them. You have to make them feel it's going to happen to them. And if you can do that, it's worth spending your effort and time producing this book. So spend a year plus, complicated writing is easy actually compared to simplifying the language. So we have to come out with analogies, come out with those creative, what do you call, caricatures and stories, and put all together to make that book. So high blood pressure has been a problem for at least 50, 60 years that we know of already. Of course, we don't know. We know from before too. And it has been written up in literature for the longest time. And somebody like me who deals with the heart physically day in and day out has not paid attention. Okay. So that really underscores the need for grassroots education.
Is it because of lack of education from the very beginning, from the medical school, going into our residencies and fellowships and so on, or hypertension, salt? So it started, let me go back a little bit. It started with with hypertension for you. And then you figured out, so now your friend or family member had this hypertension, and then you probably elicited their some history or their lifestyle choices. And then is that when you figured that people with hypertension, people or people from India who are having early coronary artery disease and cardiac problems are eating higher amounts of salt, and nobody was counseling them? Is that how it started? That so you linked salt to hypertension? Of course, we know
so
salt.
they were eating ungodly amount of salt. So I mean, 20 grams of salt easy. And my family members don't eat anything without salt. You start the meal with the salt, okay, and you finish the meal with the yogurt and salt. Along the way, everything is salty, okay. So
You
My
add
own
salt to
estimate is
yogurt
it
also.
was, yes. And that's very common in the South Indian houses, right?
Right.
And you're looking at 20 grams plus salt.
Now, what
That
is the
was,
norm?
uh,
What is the norm? I know there are recommendations. What is your recommendations of a recommended amount of salt intake or added salt intake?
very good question. This is a very important question. So I am a what do you call a foot soldier for American Heart Association. So American Heart Association has done a lot of research. American Heart Association, by the way, is the largest independent non-profit organization in the world. Although it carries the name American, it is actually a worldwide organization. And their only motto is prevent heart attacks and strokes. That's their motto. So they've put out so much of literature about how much salt you should eat, how much, what is the limitation, all that. But unfortunately, not many people are aware of it. So, point to your question, American Heart Association says you do not have to eat salt for your sodium maintenance. Says don't worry about sodium. Sodium will find you, quote unquote, from American Heart Association. Anything that we eat and drink has sodium,
You're
and
talking
that's
about
all you need.
added salt, right? You're talking
So
about you
next
don't need to
comes next
add
comes
addition. Yeah.
Yeah. So next comes what is the margin, safety of margin for added salt? Okay. Now the word that you use is recommended amount. When you say recommended amount, people usually construe that to mean I need that much salt.
Uh,
So that is where the disconnect is. So if you talk about vitamin B12, vitamin C, there's a recommended requirements for daily. USDA allowed. When it comes to salt, it is not a recommendation, but it's a limit. Don't exceed. American Heart Association says, as a general population, we should stay below 2100 milligrams. That is generally accepted by many other organizations. But American Heart Association actually lowered that to 1500 milligrams for most people, which is just about all of us fit into that criteria. Do not exceed 1500 milligrams. That is American Heart. Doesn't mean you need 1500 milligrams. That is the thing that I want to emphasize as strongly as I can. American Heart Association or anybody else, any association, have not said you need 1500 milligrams or you need 2100 milligrams or any such number. They all said stay below that. So as you stay below that number, the lowest number is the best because you don't really need to put it. There are exceptions, of course. There are people with certain problems that need to. But as a general population, zero is the best number. Whether you can get to that or not, when it comes to added salt, of course, you cannot eat food without sodium. Okay. I hope I clarified that strongly now.
Oh yeah, this is very good because more, like you said, most people think that it's like vitamins or DA, recommended daily allowance. So for
Yes.
or a dietary allowance of certain supplements or vitamins and things like that. So you have that, but for salt, it's from zero to the upper limit of 2100 grams. But then once you see, like the kind of food we eat, most of the food that let us say South Indians, especially Indians and South Indians, even Americans sometimes, or especially the Mexican side of it. So almost everything has added salt in it, right? So everything that you cook have added salt in it. And then I have learned over time that salt is an acquired taste. That salt is an acquired taste, right? So
Yes.
you can get accustomed to not having added salt in your curries and sambars and whatever,
Yes.
what have you. So tell me a little bit about that acquired taste. So how long does it take for the people to get used to it? Or do you recommend not adding salt at all? Or it's hard
Oh,
to say I'm adding 2100 grams a day. That's my limit. So how do you
okay.
gauge that?
Excellent question again. Excellent question again. So once I discovered that, when I discovered this problem in India, I came over to United States and started looking at what is the salt contribution, hypertension. And it has been written up, like I said, for 50 years. Okay. And now my wife around that time was just now becoming hypertensive. And then I told her, you need to go on a medication. My wife says, there's no way I'm going to take any pills. Then I told her, the only alternative is you to cut back on the salt intake and see what happens. I said, I'm willing to do anything. So my wife's from Nellore, right? You recognize that's a part of the world where salt intake is extremely high.
Right.
And they are used to eating very spicy, salty foods.
And pickles
So I
almost
thought she'll
every
never
day.
buy this. Yeah,
Use of
I
pickles.
thought she'll never buy that. But to answer to your question, it's been 15 years that my wife cooks every which kind of South Asian food, South Indian food. I'm talking about sambars, rasams, pulusu, vepullu, all kinds of things, day in and day out, without ever adding even a pinch of salt for the last 15 years. And she and I are the only people, we are 70 now, in our extended group of people, friends and family, relatives, everything, that we are not on antihypertensive medication. It is an extraordinarily rare thing at my age as an Indian not to be any hypertension pills. So additionally, I will tell you that if you come to our house and eat our sambar, you have no idea there's no salt in it. And many guests and my own
How do you
kids
do
come
that?
and eat.
So you add lime, you add lemon. So you have tricks to make it.
Right. There are many other things. First of all, my daughter says, Sama, you know her, right? She says you have to figure out a way to add acid into your preparation. The most common things are lime and lemon, ginger, garlic, cilantro, curry leaves, and unsalted vinegar, tamarind. So many other spices. You got to experiment with it to a point that you don't miss it. And if by any chance you still miss it, and the very last minute before you eat, that's what I do, is take a squeeze a lemon or lime instead of doing the salt shaker. And most of us can't tell the difference. Okay. So I'll tell you another very interesting story. My younger brother back then lived in East Coast, and he's younger to me. And he came home one day here, and he's got small kids. So at that time, 5 and 6, 5 and 7, I think. So they came to spend a weekend with us. And my wife made two separate preparations of everything. One's for us, one for the kids and the family. So same to point, how do you like it? So next day or so, the kids, they said, why don't we eat your stuff? Why are you making two of them? So they started eating. And it's a long weekend, okay? So they started eating next 2-3 days, unsalted food. And on the way back, my brother drove them back to the East Coast, right? So on the way, halfway or so, he wanted to indulge his son and stopped at one of the fast food places. He thought, my son ate bland food for the last 4 days. Let me treat him with what he was eating. So he called me back to tell me the story. So this is my brother's youngest son. He took one bite of that sandwich that is his favorite one, okay? That he always goes to, his go-to sandwich. He took one bite of that sandwich and spit it out and said, oh my God, it's so salty. He spit it out and didn't want anything else. So the point of the story is that for some people, it takes as little as a weekend. For some people, it takes 6, 8 weeks, 3 months. And some people, I'll be honest, they're never going to catch on to it. And they are the bullies. They will tell you, you're not having fun. And I'm eating all these spicy, salty things, and I'm enjoying life. What's the point of all kinds of dialogue they'll tell you? And I tell you, you learn dialogue in this, how many times I opened their chest and I saw them struggling, shocked and in pain. And, I know all these dialogues. Okay. So this is what is going to lead to you. So don't tell me this.
So this is very, very important, because I myself have noticed it. We cut down on salt at home, in our home. We have not completely eliminated. We are working towards that. But then whenever I go and eat a soup outside, outside at work or outside, then it tastes extremely salty. You can't. It doesn't even agree with. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't even agree with you, like you said. So it is that taste modulation that most people think that, oh, we can't live without salt. but then your body quickly learns and gets used to it. That's one thing. That's great. So I want to focus a little bit rather than going too much into the science of it, which is important in one way, but the other way is how to make it a practical reality. Having food without salt. So you gave an example of how to add acid into your food so that it almost mimics like salt. I don't want to say it like salt mimicking type of food, but you don't miss salt in the food by doing so. And
Right.
also you by adding all these natural ingredients, lime and this and that, you also have antioxidants and other health benefits from it, right?
No doubt. No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt.
So
So
another
it is
thing,
not an addiction. Yeah.
yeah, it is not an
Uh,
addiction. Yeah. So I
like
think you
smoking,
wrote a
like smoking,
chapter
not
on
an addiction.
addiction and salt addiction in your book.
Yes. So my daughter is writing a book on various recipes right now, and it may hopefully come out within the year.
Maybe I
So
should talk
salt
to your
is to,
daughter too. Have
yes,
a conversation
yes,
on
you
this
should
podcast
talk
with
to
her.
her. I mean, she's very good at making presentations, a lot better than me. She's
Yeah.
born and raised in America, she's good stage presence, and don't have the accent, all kinds of things. So you will do well to catch her attention.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, well, I'll definitely talk to your her daughter because what I want is to show our audience, show even I want to learn how to make these dishes, make them still very delicious, so you're not missing out in it. So that's one thing. Second is, this very hypertension. If you look at the history of hypertension, it's actually called essential hypertension. People think that as you age, it's essential that you have some hypertension. That's why the word essential came to be attached to that hypertension. So you are telling that uh, as we age, it doesn't have to be that way. By changing your lifestyle. So do you recommend that this habit of eliminating or cutting down the salt to the lowest possible amount start from very childhood as kids grow up, or you can pick up somewhere in the middle? What is your recommendation?
You can pick up any time, but you should start with the first solid meal the child has. That's where the problem starts. Like the grandparents and aunts and other people are the ones who create the salty craving. Actually, there's a research from Philadelphia to show that if you never give the baby salty food in the beginning, they never develop this salt like. Okay, I don't want to call it an addiction, but a the tendency to like salt. So we are the ones who are creating it. But fortunately, salt is not like smoking. We can undo that much more quickly. And to do that, there has to be two things. You need to understand why hypertension is bad. I think one of the problems medical profession is having, even doctors don't follow salt reduction. Why? Don't have a good idea. That's myself too. I have a good idea in what way, how, and why salt actually hurts you. And I think that's the second part of the problem. If you do understand salt, that's why we picked up the phrase salt kills. We picked up the phrase salt, public enemy number one, to grab the attention. This is just as bad as worse than smoking. Try to understand and learn it. When you when you do have a good understanding of the perils of that, then you'll be motivated to figure out how I can eat without salt. So that's where our challenge is. Tuesday, I was at Ohio State, the State House, talking to various lawmakers. And one of our own lawmaker from our neighborhood, I would not take his name, but he said, why would I want to eat salt, potato chips without salt? I might as well eat cardboard. I'm 70-year-old and my parents live till 90. So I love putting salt on my food. So why should I even think about any legislation about salt reduction? That's what he said. To which I said, well, congratulations. You are lucky that you don't have high blood pressure yet, but you never know when there's going to come. Secondly, um, there are 100 million Americans with high blood pressure. They're not as lucky as you are. There are 1 billion people in the world with high blood pressure. And nearly 70% of Black Americans have high blood pressure. They need your help. It's not that you don't have it, so you don't care. And other point is to make is that you don't have to eat potato chips. There are the many healthy, tasty things you can eat. And if you try a few times eating the chips without salt, you'll be surprised that you didn't need that salt.
Yeah, that's another thing you will notice, that you cut down salt and you eat potato chips, and then you immediately body rejects it. That
Yes,
salt, that excess salt,
your
and
tongue rejects it.
yeah, the body starts rejecting it, and it's just not a good feeling. So this is a great junction where I want to come to the topic of, well, two things. One is, salt doesn't just cause hypertension. Like you mentioned in the book, it also causes multiple other, or it can be part of a pathological process that can lead to asthma, stomach cancer, dementia,
Osteoporosis,
osteoporosis,
dementia.
uh,
The latest one is
diabetes.
actually diabetes.
So,
Diabetes. Do you want to hear about that? That is
yeah,
really shocking.
yeah, that is
Uh,
shocking, because most people associate sugar to diabetes, but not many. Even I don't think doctors associate salt to diabetes. Tell us about
no. No. So if you want, I can shift gears and explain how you get diabetes from eating salt. Okay.
it. Yes.
So is again a story of serendipity. I just stumbled on it. Okay. So for the longest time, and maybe it's in your practice too, especially Indians. And every time I go to India, I know my uncle or somebody has high blood pressure for 20, 30, 40 years. Now he's diabetic, right? So you see that among our own colleagues all around, people have now diabetic, but they were hypertensive 10, 30, 30, 40 years before.
Mm.
And I always felt just a hunch that diabetes follows high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, I'm talking. Okay. And there has to be some link. Why? And I've never seen myself in my 4 decades of practice. I mean, you hardly ever use the word never, but I have not seen a type 2 diabetes, whether a Desi or a Caucasian or a Black American, a type 2 diabetic who is not hypertensive. In fact, I issued the challenge many times in my talks. Oh, what's the connection of diabetes and diabetes? There's two different things. I said, sir, do you have in your practice somebody who has type 2 diabetes who doesn't have hypertension? I would like to know. Please send me a note. Okay. It's not happening. So first time I raised the challenge is in Philadelphia. So I was wondering what is the connection. And finally, the research came from Vanderbilt University, from a researcher who's been on this trail since he was in Russia. He was actually working on the Russian cosmonauts. What is their eating habits? What they're doing? Then he followed up the research in Germany. Then he came to Vanderbilt, and finally he released his research. How table salt leads to diabetes. So let me explain. So every time you eat salt, you want to neutralize that with water. You feel thirsty
Right.
and you want to create the homogenic. So that is universal. If you go to any sports bar, they want to make you eat salty things so they can sell beer, right?
Mhm.
So automatic. If you eat salt, you have to drink water, liquid to balance it. That's
Right.
automatic. Otherwise, you will have an imbalance of sodium concentration in the fluid. So what he found out very interestingly is, and working on cosmonaut, after a while that you've been used to eating salty things, you don't drink enough water commensurate with the amount of salt.
Mm.
Very interesting. You
Right.
don't drink as much you really are required to drink to make the balance. But how do you make the balance? You make the balance by breaking down glucose molecule. So as you know, glucose molecule is G6, uh, uh, H12O6. G6, I have a slide if I want to show.
Mhm.
And it combines with oxygen, 6 molecules of oxygen. In that reaction, energy is released. That's how the body runs. And the byproduct of that reaction is carbon dioxide, 6 molecule of CO2, G6H12O6, glucose molecule. combines with 6O2, oxygen molecules, produces 6 molecules of CO2. We stopped our understanding there. But there's something else that happens. What about the G6H12 part? So H12 part, so the other side of the equation is not only 6 molecules of CO2, you produce 6 molecules of water.
Yes.
6H2O, which was not in our focus at all. So what? We make some water.
Yeah.
But that's a very key portion of the research from Dr. Vanderbilt, Dr. John says. So what we are doing is, as you keep on eating salt, to compensate for it, we are breaking down more glucose than necessary to get that water. So I talked to a biochemistry professor. A human body produces 300 ml of water as a part of this energy production system on average on a typical human being. Okay. So if you are eating salt, you are breaking down more glucose than necessary so that you get that water to balance it. That's what this university found. But so how do you facilitate this reaction? Human body doesn't want to break down more glucose than necessary. Why would it do that?
Yeah.
It does that by producing excess corticosteroids. There's a pathway from salt to corticosteroid. So if you're eating salt, you're in a constant state of excess corticosteroids relative to what you would be. And he demonstrated that in experimental animals. He demonstrated on human volunteers, both. And when he finally published the research. So if you keep on eating salt, you're not only causing high blood pressure and everything else, you're putting your body at a hypercholesterol level, a hypersteroid level that eventually knocks off, causes your metabolic syndrome, causes your type 2 diabetes. And that is the relationship. So if you want to stop high blood pressure, diabetes type 2, you must first stop high blood pressure. If you stop the high blood pressure, you're going to hit 2% at the same shot. And of course, many other things that go along with it. But that is the connection. And subsequently, other researchers have published very recent, 2 years ago. In fact, they came with a formula. Every 3 grams of sodium, you take 2.3 actually, grams of sodium you take more than necessary, your risk of diabetes goes up by 30%.
Oh, wow.
This is separate research from another. Okay.
Yeah.
So this has come up after I published the book.
I see. So that hypercortisol state can also cause multiple other problems, probably, right? So chronic inflammation, osteoporosis, dementia, and what have you. That maybe they haven't discovered some of the things. And this asthma is also an interesting thing. Is it because of some osmotic imbalance that happens within the bronchioles that you develop bronchoconstriction and asthma and things like that?
So salt is like a sponge. So I walk around with a sponge sometimes, okay, just to get people to. I have this slide.
Yeah.
People stop me and say, "What is this?" It's a point of discussion. And sometimes I walk around with a sponge. I'm not here to clean up your tables. I'm trying to explain to you that salt is like a sponge, retains water, and so that was one of the important mechanisms of hypertension and heart failure. That's why everybody's in diuretics, right? So same thing in younger children. The salt itself doesn't produce asthma, but precipitates asthmatic attack. That's what the research from Indianapolis social actually. So what happens is if you they did that by doing stress test too. If after a salty meal, so it precipitates if you eat a salty meal, high salty meal, it precipitates a asthmatic attack because it simply retains water around the bronchioles, and the bronchioles become choked up. Very simple. It's just not complicated. And
have you noticed any research coming out of higher salt intake with increased intraocular pressure and glaucoma and things like that? Is that also there is a pathway?
Yes, it is there. It is also cataract. The progression of cataract is worse with our salt intake, and glaucoma progression is worse. It may or may not cause it. I don't know. But once you've been diagnosed with it, and if you don't control your salt intake, the progression is faster.
Yeah. There is a
So that is
new,
all. So
yeah. I mean, if you look at the ICD-9 codes, the diagnostic codes, there is this diagnosis with diabetes with hypertension code there. So I wondered why they link both together, diabetes with hypertension. Is it because they're seeing more, or is it that they have discovered that they both occur because of a common pathway, and they're suggesting us look at the common pathway and try to address both with one stone. So I don't know if they have gone that far yet, but maybe they are on their way there.
I wish they had. I don't believe they have, but I get you use Epic, right? In the
Yes.
Epic, when somebody's hypertension, it forces you to pick essential hypertension or secondary hypertension. What we have is not essential hypertension. Like you pointed out, is not essential. We do know how it comes. In fact, there are 13 different populations in the world that have been investigated thoroughly, who have not used salt in their history, and their blood pressure runs 90 or 60. That's their mean blood pressure, and doesn't go up with age. The idea that blood pressure goes up with age is not correct. It has to do with salt intake. In fact, most recent American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology guidelines don't make any allowance for age. Everybody should be at 120 or 80. There's benefit to be accomplished in reduction of heart attacks and strokes all the way down to 120 or 80, regardless of your age.
Didn't we learn about the elasticity of the vessel itself causing hypertension? When the way you measure hypertension itself is that you compress the vessel and you see the systolic and diastolic, measurement. So the elasticity of the vessel itself has something to do with it. And they say that as you age, there is some calcium deposition in the vessel wall, and therefore its elasticity goes down. So it's better to keep elderly like in 90s and so at a higher level, so maybe that is a different thing. I don't know if that has something to do with the salt,
So there was a research published on Delaware and young volunteers, 25, 30-year-old volunteers. If you eat a salty meal and check the blood flow in your brachial artery, within 30 minutes of eating a salty meal, the blood flow in the brachial artery goes down by 25% within 30 minutes. So that is spasm related. So you made an excellent point about elasticity of the arteries. I'm in surgery, and the nurses and students, pharmacists, all kinds of people come to watch the heart surgery, and I ask them a simple question: can you explain to me what is high blood pressure? High pressure is high. And no, I am just a dumb surgeon. I only can understand sixth grade language. So my mom came home and told me her doctor told high blood pressure. So I said, what is high blood pressure? And I ask this question very often as I go around, talk to medical students, medical residents, surgical residents, sometimes even colleague physicians. They get upset when I ask them ridiculous sound question. No, I'm serious. Could you explain to me what is high blood pressure? Cannot explain it. And just pressure is high. What do you mean pressure is high? What is that pressure high? Oh, supposed to be this pressure. It goes, why should it go up? So our fundamental understanding pathway to salt reduction is understanding of what high blood pressure is. What is high blood pressure? So if you have reached a certain point, I'm going to show a quick video and show you what high blood pressure is.
Yes, please.
And if you don't understand that, if you understand that, then suddenly you know something bad has happened. So high blood pressure is not something you just take a pill and everybody gets it and go about your business. No. High blood pressure, the fact that somebody told you have high blood pressure, it's a catastrophic event that has happened in your body. You need to look at it on those scale. Something dramatically changed in your body that should not ever happen. And that leads to many problems all over the body.
Like strokes and heart attacks and other things.
Heart attacks, strokes, dementia, kidney problem failures, so legs being lost, on and on and on. So it starts with basic understanding. First question, what is high blood pressure? So you want to take the question on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to go. Can you see this one?
Not yet.
Okay. You see the heart pumping?
No, not yet. I don't see anything yet. So are you sharing a screen?
Okay, let me try to do that again. Okay, share screen.
Yes,
One
yes,
more.
I'm able to see it now. Yes.
Okay. So here is heart pumping. It's just I just did a Google search, have a
Mhm.
GIF of a heart pumping. Okay.
Yes.
So the heart is pumping here every single heartbeat, every single minute, 24/7, non-stop. No matter what you're doing, the heart is pumping all the time. I repeat this
Yes.
on deliberately. So no matter what you're doing, heart is pumping all the time. So where is the heart pumping to? It's pumping into this big red thing, the aorta. This big red thing's aorta. It's pumping into that. The aorta is the biggest artery coming out of the heart that carries blood all over the body. You already know that,
Yes.
but just bear with me. So look at what's happening in this aorta. Each time the heart pumps, the aorta relaxes.
Hmm.
Every single time heart pumps, the artery relaxes. Every single time the heart pumps, the artery relaxes. Every single time heart. So when the heart pumps blood at a certain force, the artery receives it and maintains certain pressure to make the blood go all over the body. But when somebody says you have high blood pressure, that means when the heart pumps, your artery is not relaxing as much as it should. Heart is
Ah,
pumping, but your arteries is not relaxing as much as it should. Maybe it is pumping too much fluid. That's also his problem because water
yes.
retention. But the arteries not. So your arteries have lost their normal elasticity to receive the blood. Catastrophic development. Why is it catastrophic? Because the heart and the arteries are in a coordinated divine dances with stars. Every single
Hmm.
time the heart pumps, the artery relaxes. Every
Hmm.
single time. No question about it. Every single time. Once you get
Yeah.
high blood pressure, that means they're doing this.
Ah.
The heart and your arteries are fighting with each other. They are resisting. Your arteries are resisting more than they should when the heart pumps blood. That is high blood pressure.
So become more stiff.
So you created a war instead of a romantic dance. You created a
Ah.
battle between the heart and your arteries. You did that. Nobody else did it. You did it yourself. And in this battle, nobody wins. Your heart loses fighting this, trying to push the blood through. We call it heart failure. The arteries lose because they get damaged on the inside, many different places, wherever they fork in a branch, etc., etc. And wherever they're damaged, cholesterol builds there, and we blame cholesterol because we got a pill to sell.
Mm. Yes.
But yeah,
The
so a
lipid
smoker,
hypothesis. Yeah.
yeah. So if you're a smoker, there's not enough medicine in the world to make up for smoking. You have to quit smoking. That is job number one. Same thing with salt and its damages. You can give thousands of medications. As long as you don't stop this, it's a downhill process. So don't do it yourself.
Yes.
Is that
So
clear?
yeah. Oh yeah. This is wonderful. Because the way you explained it, like, anybody can understand it. No, you don't need to be a doctor or medical student or in any medical professional at all. So as it gets stiffer, your heart has to pump harder to push the blood, and therefore it
Yes.
becomes enlarged, and that's how you might develop cardiomyopathy, which we call hypertensive cardiomyopathy. And then
Yes.
as the heart enlarges and becomes thicker and heavier, it needs more blood circulation, may not meet the demand and supply of the heart, and you might end up with coronary artery. So it's just the
You know
whole
all the ramification. You know all the ramification.
ramification.
It's a battle with many areas of battlefields. Battle is going on in different location, different way,
Yeah,
and everybody loses. It's not a battle anybody's going to.
yeah, yeah. So I want to shift gears, or maybe continue on this trail here with, do we talk about salt sensitive people? So is you mentioned somebody who was 70s and eats salty chips and still doing okay without hypertension? Is it because they are less salt sensitive, or is Black or African American population more so? Is that certain group of population could be more salt sensitive, and recommendations have to go out to them, identify them, maybe do some genetic testing or precision medicine, what have you, and say, hey, you are salt sensitive and you are at a higher risk of developing hypertension. You have to be extra careful than somebody who is. This is more like personalized medicine, right? So
Yes.
talk to us
So
about that.
we're not quite there yet, but we will be soon. So just going back, this is C6H12O6 plus 6O2, 6CO2, and 6HTO. See that?
Yes.
That's the one that we are interested in. So where was that slide?
Salt sensitive.
So this research is done by one Dr. Dahl. He's considered the father of hypertension. Can you see this slide?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Dahl is considered the father of hypertension. He testified in Congress in 1969, and he told Congress the human body does not need added salt or sugar. Physiologically, there's no need for salt or sugar. Okay. And he conducted this very exquisite experiment. We tried to explain it with this graph. And what he has done is he took rats and fed them salt. He found out some rats develop high blood pressure very quickly, very rapidly, and die from the consequences of them. And some rats on the other extreme don't develop high blood pressure at all. And there is variation, every switch variation in between. Okay.
The same amount of
so
salt.
he called these rats that developed high blood pressure quickly as salt sensitive rats. And these rats that didn't develop salt sensitivity, didn't develop hypertension, he called them Dahl as in or resistant rats.
Resistant.
And being salt sensitive or salt resistant is transmitted to generation after generation after generation. It is a genetic thing. Unfortunately, there is no easy test at this moment to find out how salt sensitive you are so that you can relax your rules about how much salt you can eat. It is coming, but we're not there yet. But in the meantime, it's important to know that Black America is the saltiest, subgroup of people
sensitive
in the world. They are
they eat more
somewhere.
salt?
No, whatever salt
they're more salt sensitive, you mean?
They're more salt sensitive. 70% of Black America is salt sensitive. And Caucasians, 25% are salt sensitive. Okay. And Desi Indians fall somewhere in between, closer to Black America. That's why it's a bigger problem for Indians. So you never know how salt sensitive you are until the silent killers catch on and affect your body. The smart play would be to assume that you might be salt sensitive and try to work with as less salt as you can so you don't have to deal with all this problem.
Yeah.
And taste will change anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Do an elimination diet, sort of. So eliminate diet and see, eliminate for a few days and see if your need for hypertensive medication goes down, or if your blood pressure naturally improves, then you may be more salt sensitive than somebody who doesn't change that. So yeah, that is so. And also,
this is one other slide I want to share with you as we are on that subject.
Yes.
Blood pressure 90 or 60 doesn't change with age. One of the groups that has been studied that never ate salt in their history. So the word essential needs to go away, but I cannot click anything other than that when I'm picking diagnosis in EPIC. It binds you to do that. So unfortunately, okay. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack. Please go ahead.
No. So these Indian, I assume that these are some kind of tribes who.
Yeah, in Brazilian jungles, Yanomami.
Who live in jungles, So they I think they eat less processed food also, So the kind of processed.
Obviously, they're not exposed to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then talk about the processed food. So what? Are we looking at some kind of regulate? We always talk about sugar in the processed food, and there is less talk on or discussions, even in professional circles, on salt in the processed food.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. But lawmakers, I just give an example of. I met Governor Devine multiple times, and Swami also met him on our own. We pressed him to introduce salt regulations. We pressed him to, for example, there is a project that I have been pushing called a petition to Restaurant Association to reduce salt intake, swap the salt campaign. Actually, the Miami Valley RP endorsed that campaign, and I approached the governor with this subject, and the governor said, "I don't have the votes to do that." But you know what you did? You made my life miserable. I said, "How did I do that?" He said, "My wife read the book and she won't let me put salt on my food anymore." Okay. So I'm taking your advice personally for my own self, but
direct to consumer marketing. So you can do that. Direct to consumer.
I don't have the and exemplified by the recent discussion I had at the State of Ohio, the State House. We have a long way to go, and WHO rightly said, salt is a very difficult problem.
Yeah.
Very difficult problem.
Yeah.
So we all need to keep on working at it, and eventually we might get there. But
I think
just keep doing it.
Yeah. Please go ahead. And this was what I was coming to. What are the kind of natural foods and vegetables or nuts and things like that that you recommend, or the kind of salt content in them? Please go ahead.
So American Heart Association has a infographic called Salty 6. Okay. I just did the search. Can you see this?
Yes, I can see. I can see the PowerPoint. I can see the infographic.
So let me go back to it. So whenever I switch,
I think you have to come out of it and then reshare it.
Okay. So you see this now?
Yes, I can see this. Yeah.
Okay. This is Salty 6. Okay. American Heart Association produced this a few years back. And every one of my patients, whether I do surgery or not, even if I see them in the office, gets a copy of this. Okay.
Can you enlarge this? I want to have a better view.
Salty 6.
See if you can enlarge this. See if you can enlarge. Yeah. Okay.
Can you still see it?
No, I lost it. Maybe you can enlarge. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we got the idea. So you can Google it. It's called Salty 6, right? Salty 6. Okay.
How about this? Is the biggest I can.
Oh, this is better. Yes.
Okay. So unfortunately, America does not make bread without salt, believe it or not. If you're salt sensitive, you would start with that. I think
it doesn't taste salty, right? But it gives that taste to it, I think. Or maybe it is. It also works as a preservative.
Well, we don't need any preservative for them. Okay. I mean, for example, you go to Indian stores and buy chapatis, they put salt in it. And so why do you put a salt in it? You have freezers all over the place. A typical Indian household has 3 freezers. We don't need that. But we do go to Indian places and tell them, can you make us 100 chapatis without salt? They'll make it for you. Okay. So we have done that. And number 2 biggest culprit, especially when it comes to Black America, is the processed meats. Processed meats. Okay. Very salty. Very salty. Very, very salty. So between the processed meat, which is salty, bread, which is salty, cheese, which is salty, the mayonnaise, which is salty, the dressing, which is salty, a single sandwich is plenty to send you to your hypertension situation. So I encourage people to make a copy of this, put it on your refrigerator, put it on your coffee table, put it on your door front. If you just had heart surgery, anybody bringing any of those things is not my friend. Things like that. So I'm doing my part, try to push as hard as I can to educate people, but more people need to join in.
This is wonderful because people take it lightly, so they think that you can eat whatever but takes hypertension pills. But what happens is with hypertension, the high blood pressure medication, you're only working on a number. You're not actually controlling anything that's going on inside your body. It is only a symptom of something more sinister that's happening in your body, right? So these high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or whatever, they're not simple numbers. They're actually telling us they're signs or symptoms of something more dramatic that is happening. And if you just it's like giving Tylenol to fever and not addressing the infection there. It's giving
You're
high blood
100% right.
pressure. Yeah. So blood pressure. So we
100%.
talk about, yeah. So I think your your book, your talks, and so on, and this podcast, I hope this helps both the healthcare professionals and the public to look at this more seriously or more sincerely, I would say, and start working on it, including myself and people like me, start cutting down as you age. It becomes even more important, I guess, because your activity goes down. You're not, you're even kids these days are not physically that active. We used to go schools and colleges in bicycles, when we were
Yes.
younger, but now those days are gone.
Yes. They're all doing the bicycle on the Nintendo.
Nintendo, yeah.
So you asked an earlier question about what are good foods to eat for prevention of hypertension. So I prepared two charts: sodium and potassium content of fruits and sodium and potassium content of nuts. Okay, can you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you see in one just snapshot? You don't have to really memorize all these things, but this is any number of common fruits that are available. And what is common to all of them is that potassium content is very high and the sodium content is very little. You see that? And it's just a snapshot.
And potassium is protective for hypertension, right?
Yes. So, the same story with unsalted nuts.
Look at the pistachio.
And what happens in unsalted nuts? Again, very high amount of potassium, very little bit of sodium. This is the only sodium you need. This is not table salt. And if you're interested in lowering your blood pressure, in addition to not eating salt as well as you can, you need to have a generous amount of fruits and nuts. This alone will reduce the number of pills from 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 1 to nothing.
Wow.
And there are many people who have done that, has been demonstrated as well.
Yeah.
So make it a part of your daily, your regular snack should be some kind of nuts.
Yes.
And in fact, I have jars of nuts in my office, in my kitchen, and even in the hospital where I normally sit. Instead of reaching for potato chips and various other snacks, I just grab some nuts, and they are filling, healthy. And
talking about grabbing nuts and grabbing chips and donuts and other things, even in hospitals, you go to the doctor's lounge or you go to these places, you see chips and potato chips and all kinds of chips, varieties of chips packets, and then there is donuts and other things, and all these are full of salt, right? So I don't know if we don't do it, if it doesn't start with us, I don't know how to convince.
That's my biggest challenge. I keep on telling my classmates and colleagues and physicians and meetings, it has to start. We have to walk the walk. We have to walk the walk.
Yeah.
Taste, it changes.
Taste change.
Taste will change.
Yeah. Yes.
Taste will change.
Yeah. So, I hope more.
At my insistence, at least two of the hospitals, Soin, for example, has at the doctor's lounge a generous big jar of unsalted nuts. And every morning they bring a bowl of berries.
Yeah.
At my insistence. Yeah. And in fact, when I go into the doctor's lounge, everybody hides their food. Okay. And if I see somebody eating healthy, I give a card, 3x5 card, says, thank you for engaging prevention. And it has a star. You get a gold star. And it lists on the backside all the health problems that come from salt. Okay. And if I see somebody eating potato chips and other unhealthy things, I give the same card. On the other side has a don't do it yourself sign. Okay. And he said, I'm sorry, ma'am, I have to give you a ticket. So I give that card and I say, next time I want you to earn a gold star.
Yeah.
So I put them on a guilt trip. And I told when I first landed in Soin and Grandview, I said, I may not accomplish anything in this hospital, but one thing I will change. I will change the food culture and this culture of this hospital, and you're not going to be able to stop me.
That's amazing. Yeah, so, healthy prevention of disease starts in the kitchen. right? In the kitchen,
Yes.
in the doctor's lounges, or in any cafeterias and other places. I mean, this is amazing because most people focus on sugar and oils and cholesterol and other things, and this is being very much ignored topic in our health. And I think part of it has to do with food industries lobbying and other things, but we don't want to get into that discussion because that's a whole long discussion. But so far, we have learned that salt kills. Essentially, that is the summary of, salt kills your blood vessel, your kills in the sense it doesn't like immediately kill you, but it'll eventually
Silent.
kill. Yeah, it is a silent killer. Yeah. So I think we can conclude here. We can stop this conversation. Maybe at some point we'll have more practical tips on how to cook with less salt, maybe with you, maybe with your daughter, or both together, and things like that. So we'll regroup at some point.
Mhm. Yes, I would like an opportunity as we go along next time, possibly, as to what happens, why there's a blockage built in a certain place. What is it connection with salt? That explained why that is more of hypertension than cholesterol problem. I have numerous images and pictures to explain why that is, but that will be for another occasion.
Oh yeah,
But
that'd be
will
super
drive home
helpful.
the
Yeah.
point. Yes.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. So maybe we can have a series like 2 or 3 on this topic of salt and the problems it can cause to our
Yes.
health. So Dr. Neravetla, thank you so much for spending this time out of your busy schedule, and we will continue this discussion. I hope I'll leave some links in the description for those interested in getting your book, reading your blogs, and maybe your other talks and things like that. So let's meet at some point again in the future and continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Rajiv, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation very much. I enjoyed the opportunity, and I hope this is the beginning of a great partnership. We'll continue to do this.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Yes.